Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 5 of Rooted in Riv podcast. I am your host, Eric Pacheco, and on today's episode, we will be recapping ASU football's 2025 season with the State Press sports editor, my good friend and colleague, Niall Rosenberg. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
And I'm pleased to be joined now by my colleague over at the State Press, sports editor Niall Rosenberg. Thank you, Niall, for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Let's get right into it. ASU football, another strong season in 2025, even though it might have been disappointing to some. Just overall, I know you had a chance to cover the Sun Bowl down in El Paso on New Year's Eve. Overall, what were your takeaways, your thoughts about that game and just overall the end of the season as a whole?
Yeah, one of the big things that I really found interesting about the Sun Bowl was the impact of the offense, despite missing almost all starters. I think the only couple starters that played in that game were Malik McClain, Jalen Moss, and if you consider Jaron Hamilton still a starter, he was more of like that fourth, fifth receiver. But also, the offense played way better than it ever has all season long. I mean, Jefferson's best game was in the Sun Bowl, where I think he had almost 500 yards of total offense just by himself, and then had 5 touchdowns. I mean, we talked about it before, like personally, obviously before this, and just you wrote a whole story on it. But the Jeff Sims experience, like you really never know what you're gonna get out of this guy,
Right.
and it's a fascination about what happens with him. But yeah, and also another wrinkle that really came through that a lot of us in the press box were talking about was that it was Marcus Arroyo telling Dillingham the plays, and Dillingham would then communicate them to Jeff Sims. Is like kind of what was going on. But Kenny played a much bigger role in the offense for the Sun Bowl, and it really showed up well. So that's something to keep an eye on for next season to see how big of a role Dillingham really plays in play calling and just the overall expectations.
Right, yeah, I remember seeing the tweets coming out and hearing it on the broadcast about that kind of dynamic between Arroyo and Dillingham for that game. And also, you got to take into account that ASU had what, like a month to prepare for that game, or
Of
maybe
course.
3 weeks after they found out that Duke was going to be their opponent. So that probably plays into a factor of why the offense was so good. I mean, we all know how Dillingham is, the offensive mind that he is. And,
Yes.
you give him weeks to prepare, he's going to scheme it up and do well. But I mean, Jeff Sims is definitely going to be missed in Tempe. Not just for the player he was, for him to come on late with everything going on and, Sam goes down for the season and there's drama right there with him entering the portal and all that.
Of course.
For him to step up and be the leader that he was and, to perform the way that he did when a lot of people kind of just wrote ASU off and, for him to keep him in the mix for that long, that will definitely be missed, the leader that he was and the player as well. But, kind of moving forward into the portal season, I mean, it's kind of been chaotic these past couple of weeks with all the portal moves, just the transfer portal as a whole in college football is chaotic, not just with ASU, but what can you say so far about what ASU has done to this point? I believe the portal closes on Friday, right?
Yes, I believe so. I think it's the 16th that
Hmm.
everything officially closes. But I think just one of the most interesting things was really how much impact Dillingham really has around the NCAA. And, like, players want to play for this guy. You don't get Omari Miller and Reed Harris unless you have the head coach that can recruit really well. And also the staff recruits so well. I mean, Brian Carrington, the ASU brought in a couple of good defensive backs. Brian Carrington's constantly at the top of recruiting rankings every single year. He's a guy that people want to play for. And on top of that, it's the whole new world of NIL, and like you almost have like a salary budget is really what's kind of assigned to you. And the fact that Levitt was leaving, that cleared up so much money for ASU to spend on the rest of the offense. I mean, I think it was reported from Chris Cartman. I think he was saying Cutter Boley is probably going to be making a fraction, like a small fraction of what Levitt's making at LSU. And so they went
Hmm.
out and they looked at their roster and they're like, okay, we need receivers to replace it because we have three good ones leaving. We need a new quarterback, or at least a couple quarterbacks to come in and compete with the young guys who are here. And we need to fix the secondary. That we're losing 5 players in. So they went out and they are adding different players that really are needed. And one of the other big additions was the 2 defensive ends, Jalen Thompson and Amarian Winston, where Dorba, Clayton Smith, Watley and Elijah O'Neal, your top four defensive ends are all gone. They all ran out of eligibility or they're all going to the draft. So it's really interesting to see just how different of an approach because they came firing right out the gates. I think they're still ranked 11th in the country right now in portal
Right.
rankings.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was gonna say I think they're up there in terms of portal rankings. I mean, it changes constantly when, teams are picking up guys left and right, seemingly every hour or so. But I mean, I think if you follow ASU, if you're a reporter or whatnot, I think you have to be pleased and or be impressed by what ASU has done this far. Obviously, the big, kind of like sexy picks are Cutter Boley coming in, the two receivers coming in. Those are the offense is obviously going to get the most shine. Boley was all SEC freshman last year. He has some turnover issues, but young and he's going to come in, and I don't think the job is necessarily his right away. Um,
Right.
you got the transfer coming in from Michigan. His name slips me right now, but coming in there,
Mikey Keene.
Mikey Keene, right, a veteran, kind of like a Jeff Sims-esque kind of guy, I would
Yeah.
say, a veteran guy who's been there, done that, played, you know, around the college football world. And, coming in to compete with the two young guys, Cam Dyer and Jake Fetty or Jake Fett, um, next season. So it should be interesting. I mean, obviously losing Levitt kind of, put a damper in a lot of people's minds. And, a lot of Sun Devil faithful have shared their opinions on him these past couple of days after his commitment to LSU. But I think, if you trust Dillingham, who he is as a coach, not just, with his belief in his players, but like I said, his offensive mind, I think you have to feel pretty confident in what they've done to rebuild and, kind of reload this team in this portal season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only that, it's like what he's done with players that have never really seen the spotlight. I mean, we're talking about the Big 12 championship team. They were plus 50,000 odds that season, and they won it. And also, not only
Hmm.
that, the injuries. I don't think people understand the injuries ASU had this past season. Levitt played 7 games, I believe. Tyson
Right.
was out for almost half the season. Kyson Brown, who was supposed to be your running back one, obviously Raleek filled in really well. But Kyson came in. He got injured the second game of the season and barely saw the field after that. You have Xavier Alford, who was probably going to be one of the best safeties in the draft. He was out for the entire season, and you had your starting center go out for the entire season. And so it's different what he's able to do with his depth, and the depth's really showed in the Sun Bowl as well. But he is one heck of a coach, and that's led to a lot of national attention for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of national attention for Dillingham, obviously, during the coach carousel. And, basically every high market, Power Five team was like, oh, Dillingham's going to be our next guy. Dillingham's going to be our next guy. And, for a while, I know me and you talked about this throughout the season. We were like, nah, I don't see it. LSU is going to go get Lane, and all these other SEC schools seem pretty locked in on some of these guys. The only time there was really some concern, I think, was that Michigan job. But, looking it back now that the dust has settled on all that, I don't think there was ever a question that Dillingham was leaving. Was he using those opportunities as leverage? 100%. I think you saw that in the way he spoke to the media. He was always kind of like foreshadowing like a couple weeks in advance. I remember, during the season when he kind of went on a spiel about, we need these local businesses to, put some money into this program. And then like a week or two later, boom, Levitt's announcing that he's entering the portal. And then, you kind of start connecting dots and stuff. To, maybe he was planting seeds and saying, hey, I need help. And, ASU administration ultimately came through, obviously, with him signing that 5-year extension. So, but I mean, like you kind of said earlier, I mean, who wouldn't want to play for this guy? Who wouldn't want to be a Sun Devil when you have that coach and you see his passion? I mean, he gets emotional at press conferences when he just talks about this school, this city, this state, all that stuff. Just really, he's really just a great guy. I think a great coach as well. I mean, and that kind of translates to his athletes on the field.
And on top of that, every single player you'll talk to says how much they love playing for Kenny Dillingham. Every single one. And they're like, what's led to your success? Coach Dilly, like they call him Dilly. They said Dilly's brought me here. Dilly's done this. Dilly's done that. And so when you have such a player centric coach where the players want to play their best for him, that will lead to success. And, I mean, some teams might take 8-5 and say, "Hey, that's not really where we want to be." But for ASU and everything they've gone through, 8-5 is perfectly fine. And if fans are upset with the way, the Big 12 championship coming back, not a great year, then I mean, you know what? You're never gonna be happy in life, like at that point. So, and on top of that, it's like when you're mentioning with the 5-year extension, it's he really, I think, had a lot of interest around the country. I think a lot of teams were really looking at him, but he grew up here. He went to school at ASU, and he just wants to stay at Sun Devil. I think that if there's a huge job, I mean, not many jobs are gonna be bigger than Michigan to really come around, but if there's a job like that coming around in maybe 5, 10 years, he might take that. But I think right now he wants to make a powerhouse program. He wants to build it at ASU, and that's gonna really start with getting money for his program. And that's where I think they are really struggling to compete with a team like Texas Tech, which has unlimited money from billionaire donors.
Right. And another thing about Dillingham, he's the same guy no matter what, especially in front of the press. Obviously, we don't know him behind the scenes, but in the press and, just around hearing things, he's the same guy after a win, after a loss, in adversity when there's like 40 cameras, more than usual at practice, asking him about Sam Levitt entering the portal. I mean, he faces that with his chin held high, and he's going to answer the questions. I mean, he tiptoed around that question, but I mean, he kind of has to in that scenario, but he's the
Yeah.
same guy. He's going to keep the same demeanor. He's going to be, straightforward with the press. And I imagine that's the same way he is with his players. And that's just another thing that goes into, what makes him him and what makes ASU
Right.
on the rise.
And not only that, it's like also dodging the questions about Levitt. It's like I think we're learning more. I mean, there's been reports about him, Levitt being injured playing recreational basketball. There's been reports about him, his brother shopping him around to other schools in the country. There's no real actual hard evidence behind it. But if stuff like that is going on, Dillingham protected Levitt the whole entire time. Even
Right.
though, you know, he some people believe he quote unquote gave up on the team. Okay, but Dillingham still protected him. And so that's
Mhm.
how much he cares about the people who play for him. Is that even if you do him wrong, he will always be there to protect you. And that's why he's one of the probably going to be the hottest coaching commodities. Every single coaching cycle that opens up, Kenny Dillingham's name will be at the top of everybody's list.
Yeah, unless ASU is like in the Natty or,
Right.
competing one of those final couple of teams left in the playoff. I mean, he's going to be the hottest commodity, like you said. And back to the Levitt point, when that whole thing about he hurt his ankle playing basketball or whatnot, it was Dillingham who went into the press conference and answered the question before anyone even asked it. He said, basically that was bogus and that's a load of crap. That Levitt would never do that. He's such a competitor, and went on to like just praise him and say, what kind of guy he is. And all throughout the process, even when he couldn't say much about the portal or him entering the portal, he just went on and praised Levitt and how much he loved him and how much, they worked together well. And even when it was announced that Levitt entered the portal, Sam Levitt hasn't officially come out with a statement or anything thanking ASU, or he never came out with a statement saying, I'm entering the portal. And like most athletes in the NCAA right now do, he hasn't done that. Dillingham went out on his own Twitter and said, this guy's such a great competitor and he's going to be successful wherever. So, but
And
kind of or go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, just on top of that, it's any player who enters the portal at ASU, Dillingham will be the first one to tweet the player's tweet and be like, whoever's getting this guy, you're getting a great player, and he's going to be good no matter where he goes. I don't know many coaches that are going to do that. They're going to
Mhm.
praise players that are leaving the program.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know when the time frame was, but in one of his Monday media availability, he talked about not holding players hostages, and he's not a salesman. If you want to be here, great, and he's going to make this. He's going to give you the keys to success. He's going to try to make you as successful as possible, but he's not selling you on this fake kind of thing, or promising you a starting spot or whatnot. And he's not going to hold you hostage and beg you to stay in the program. You want to leave, go ahead, and he's going to wish you the best on your way out. But if you want to stay, then he's going to help you become the best football player and person that you can be. Kind of shifting off that to more in depth on the Sam Levitt saga. I mean, definitely, there's a lot of rumors that have gone around about him. And, like I said earlier, the Sun Devil faithful has, been very vocal about how they feel about him these past couple of days, especially after his commitment to LSU a couple of days ago. Um, I mean, it's a touchy subject, and it's a tough subject because really a lot of it's unknown. What you can say
Yeah.
is that when Levitt was on the field for ASU, I think they were a very, very good football team, and they could hang in there with anyone. I mean, that game against Texas Tech earlier this season, Texas Tech were world beaters against basically everyone else until they ran into Oregon in the college football playoff. But I mean, he beat them and, hobbled as well. He wasn't 100% going into that game. I mean, but what can you say about Sam Levitt and his time at ASU?
I mean, you have a dude who is going to compete till he can't anymore. And that the fact that he came in as a redshirt freshman and brought and helped bring his team to the playoffs, that is something that not many teams can say that they can do. And he's one of these quarterbacks where he gets better as the game goes on. And that
Mhm.
a lot of the time they'll ask you, what are your nerves at the end of that? He goes, what nerves? I don't have nerves. He's going to be a competitor. He's going to be a fighter, and he's going to win football games. No matter where he's going to go, he's going to win football games. And if he can just get more into spreading the ball out to that talent, I mean, he's going to have 5 stars and 4 stars to throw to. No matter who's coming to LSU, he's going to have that. If he could spread the ball out better, and I think one thing that we really saw last season, where we talked about a lot, I've also talked about a lot of with other media, is like he gets his snap and he will stare down Jordan Tyson for 2 seconds and then realize, oh crap, I need to scramble. And his
Right.
scramble ability, I put it up there with anybody in college football. He can escape the
Mhm.
pocket and get out like no one else. And
Mhm.
and and if he could just really get more into like that pro style of spreading the ball out well, I think he's going to be I think he'd be one of the first quarterbacks taken off in the 2027 draft.
Right, no doubt. I mean, and he's going with a great offensive mind in Lane Kiffin, and I don't know what his name is off the top of my head, but the Ole Miss OC heading over to LSU as well.
Oh,
Those
Charlie Weiss Jr.?
Yeah, Charlie Weiss Jr. That tandem there. I mean, he's going to be around another great offensive mind, and so it wouldn't be shocking if he goes out and has a great season and is up there. Talked about being one of the first quarterbacks off the board in next year's draft. I mean, you talked about his kind of magician ability, making plays, scrambling and all that stuff, and you touched on, we kind of felt like in that Texas Tech game, he was injured, he couldn't move around as much, but when he sat in the pocket and he read the field and he anticipated and he made those plays from the pocket, that was probably the best game of his season. And, he
Yes.
wasn't, I believe Tyson caught a touchdown, but I feel like Tyson wasn't as heavily involved as he normally was, like getting 10 plus targets a game. I may be wrong, but it felt like more he was spreading the ball out, like you kind of said. I mean, it's tough. You have Jordan Tyson, who's going to be, one or two wide receiver first off the board in this
Right.
upcoming draft.
Yes. Yeah.
And, not to knock on the other ASU wideouts, but, none of those guys are garnering the same kind of NFL draft level, hype as Jordan Tyson is. So, I mean, obviously you're gonna look at the guy first, but no, it did seem kind of at a time where like, okay, he's just either staring down Tyson too long or he's forcing the ball to him when when he showed that he can be so dynamic, utilizing the rest of his weapons, and like you said, at LSU, he's going to have a plethora of options to throw the football to.
Yeah, and he's a quarterback who gets better outside the pocket. And he can just make magic happen. Like on the fourth down play on the last ASU scoring drive, he gets out of the pocket. I believe it was 4th and 2, and he'll just throws up a floater up to Tyson, and they're down and now they're in the red zone. And just his ability to also escape sacks and just get out of the way of harm. And I mean his tape is some of the craziest stuff you're gonna see when he's out of the pocket doing his magician work. It's really impressive. And I mean, there's already one ASU to transfer to LSU quarterback who ended up doing pretty well. So I think Levitt will he's got a good chance to be the next one after Jaden Daniels.
Right. And I mean, just another thing about his competitiveness. I remember being, we were down there in the end zone,
Hmm.
preparing for the end of the game against Texas Tech, and Raleek Brown punched in that final go-ahead touchdown. And Levitt's literally in there behind him, like throwing his entire body
Yes.
into that pile, like no risk, like no harm, harm thrown to the wind or risk thrown to the wind, whatever. I mean, like he's a fighter, and he's a competitor. He's going to do what it takes to try to win the football game. And, ASU fans can say what they want about him right now. Obviously, it's tough in any sport, professional, college. When your player leaves somewhere else, you're gonna have a sour taste in your mouth. But I mean, you can't deny what he did when he was wearing the uniform on the field. He gave it his all for sure.
Yes, he gave everything he had to win games at ASU. He obviously like you said, the circumstances maybe not great, but if you if any Sun Devil fan doesn't believe that he played his hardest and he gave everything he did to ASU, then you'd be wrong. He gave everything he could to the university, and as he's going to a bigger school that it could be hard to watch it, but at the same time, it's like he gave Arizona State arguably its greatest season in the history of its program.
Right.
So
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll wrap it up there unless you have anything else you want to add to that. And
yeah, just watch out for ASU next year. I mean, it's a loaded portal room, and there's gonna be a lot of new faces because I think ASU's they're losing a lot of seniors. So
all
it's
right.
I think the first couple of games are gonna tell you a lot about the team next season. But just keep a watch out and read Eric's stuff.
Or Niall stuff he edited.
Of
But appreciate you, man.
course.
Thank you for joining me this today. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Niall for joining me today. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Rosenberg Niall and follow us at the State Press at State Press Sports on Twitter and Instagram to follow along with all the great work that we will be doing this semester. And make sure you follow me on Instagram at the Eric Pacheco, on Twitter at Eric Pacheco ASU. Make sure you like, subscribe to this podcast for more episodes here at Eric Pacheco Pod. Thank you. God bless. Have a great day.